this, dude. Like, you just launch while we're going. We have a new routine, and
Oh my gosh, this is fun.
Welcome back, Mighty Vandals, to Tubs the Club, your University of Idaho affiliate on the Big Sky Podcast Network. I'm your host, Brian Marceau, joined, as always, by producer Redacted, hanging out in the shadows, and apparently some other places, Marten Heemstra. How's it going in Moscow, dude?
It's cold, but I'm happy to be talking Idaho football before playoffs start.
Dude, it's the last week of the regular season. Obviously not the last week of Idaho season, but we'll talk about that later. Speaking of which, Tubs the Club presented by Snake River Stampede Canadian Whiskey. We have a special host. And now Tom Kendall in the comments section right on top of it saying, wow, the jungle has changed some. You know what? Okay, so Tom, here's what happened. We had McLean from ISU coming on. He had a family emergency he had to take care of. And so McLean, he's off the hook. The other ISU guys, total cowards, couldn't make it in. So, and I like, hey, I know there's excuses, but I'm going with my explanation, the end. But so we dug deep to find another noted Idaho State expert. Yes, that's Colby Peterson, a.k.a. Hey, Tubs the Club guys. You guys are all familiar with him because if you got a shirt like mine that I'm popping right now, or actually a shirt like Colby's, you're wearing his stuff. Colby Peterson, he is not only the host of Weber State Weekly, which is back, not only the host of, what's the Tuesday show you and Parlay do?
Oh, we've been doing it on Monday nights, Big Sky, Big Takes. We're talking about, we guess the lines before they come out.
Yeah, the 2024 incarnation of Big Sky, Big Takes. Colby hosts that as well when he's not busy slanging T-shirts for Walk On Apparel. Colby, how's it going, dude?
Good. Appreciate you guys having me on, man. I mean, Idaho has been such a great fan base for Walk On, and so it's kind of nice to get to say what's up to everybody and thank them out here because Tubbs has been great. Idaho's been great. We really appreciate you guys and a ton of support from the fan base for Walk On Apparel.
Yeah, as you can see in the comments section, Jason Mayer, walk on wank, right? I guess, hey, you know what, if this is a free market research for you, because I mean you were looking for a new ad campaign, right? So hey, the walk on wank, obviously that's going to work well. Okay, guys, look, we're here to talk Idaho State. Now, you might be thinking, hey, that's the Battle of the Domes, right? No, it's not the Battle of the Domes now that the sponsorship from ICCU is off the table. However, there is a kick-ass trophy that's infinitely better than the 0.0035 pound piece of plastic that we used to have for the Battle of the Domes. This potato, which does not have a name, and yeah, I know it's not King Spud, but whatever, it's as close as we're going to get football, guys, so just buckle up and enjoy. This was carved by none other than Jarek Walcott himself, SID for University of Idaho, in Moscow. So yeah, the beautiful potato on top. And by the way, I've seen that in person. It's a huge trophy. It's not it's not a Continental Divide trophy like in Montana, but that dude's nice, and that's going to look a lot nicer in the trophy case after this week than the Battle of the Domes trophy. But hey, that's what we're playing for in a literal sense. But you guys know the stakes. If Idaho wins here, they're going to get a first-round bye for sure. So, look, the first question we got, Colby, and you recently, as a Weber State fan, you got to see the good of Idaho State. You did not get to experience last week ISU giving up 77 points to Eastern, forcing 0 punts and 11 possessions, getting defensive coordinator Josh Runda fired before the last game of the season. By the way, Runda's not the first Idaho State defensive coach to leave the team this year. Defensive line coach Cody Crawford left earlier. So this is kind of control-delete, you might say. But my take here is, as a Vandal, I'm pretty stoked to see what the second brightest defensive mind in Pocatello has in store for us. So, Colby, look, you guys saw Weber State had the last good week out of Idaho State. So when you're thinking about a Bengals matchup, take it whatever direction you want. What's the first thing that comes to mind?
Yeah, our game was unique because the Stripes always get up to see us, right? Like, they hadn't won in Ogden in my life. I'll be 40 next year.
They found another lost trophy.
We had a trophy sitting in the Weber State archives for 50 years that we brought back out and immediately lost. So I didn't love that. But the Stripes definitely got up for us, and I got to think that they're probably going to get up for you guys too, because that seems to be the thing. They didn't get up very well for Eastern, though, did they?
It's incredible to score 42 points and lose by 5 touchdowns.
And still lose massively, yeah. 77 points. I mean, Eastern is known for scoring, right? But, man, 77. Holy cow.
Yeah, no one's known for scoring 77.
Yeah, it's a lot. But, yeah, the Stripes, against us when they came to Ogden, they're a team that when we took a look at them, we noticed that Kobe Tracy likes to throw the ball, and he likes to throw it early. We thought maybe our defensive line might be able to get a little bit of pressure on him, but he's tough because he gets the ball out so quickly that you don't necessarily have the chance. So I like what we saw from your guys' secondary against us last week. I think that there's some good matchups there. But, yeah, this is a team that wants to throw the ball for the most part, but they did have success running against us as well.
Yeah, so Idaho State rushes a bit more than they did last season, which is a very low bar to clear. Yeah. But the name of the game in Idaho State is still, hey, they want to put up points. They want to move the ball. They're going to go tempo a lot. You're going to see a lot of 4 and 5 wide sets. And like you said, Colby, that starts with Utah Tech transfer Colby Tracy, my bad, as at quarterback on the season. There's not an L in there. It's Kobe, like Kobe Bryant, Colby Tracy. Right. On the season, 60% completion, 24 touchdowns, 7 picks. He moves the ball pretty well. Look, he's going to throw a couple. There's always going to be a couple passes that are a little on the risky side. He has a little bit of a gunslinger in him, but Tracy is the engine behind Idaho State. They're scoring 34 a game on the Big Sky season. That's around what Idaho did last season when Idaho's understood as a pretty good offensive team. If you're 2 parts, right? Hey, Kobe Tracy is a mostly pocket passer. Like he's not like Kakova Vesperis as far as they're not running 1,000 read options with him. No. But hey, you throw the ball, you catch the ball. One of the things that stands out for me about Idaho State is low key. they have some pretty strong wide receivers. Like the top two names that are going to pop out are Jeff Weimer. He's kind of the bigger target, number 6. He leads the team with 71 catches, 6 touchdowns. Then Christian Fredrickson. He's a smaller one. He's got 60 catches for 839 yards on the season, 8 touchdowns. So between those two, that's 14 touchdowns. So as a whole, the Idaho State has 4 receivers with 30 catches or more. The other names you're going to hear: Ian Duarte and Raiden Brown as far as pass catchers. But hey, when you watched ISU against Weber, or hey, Andrew Whipple saying stripes, it sounds like you're talking refs. Just call him the Bengals guest guy. No, dude, that's Andrew. Man, that's Colby's thing. That's always been the stripes. But
we call them the stripes. They call themselves the stripes. I don't know. It's just became a thing.
Yeah. So Idaho State, as far as like their pass catchers, to me, they were kind of shockingly solid. I feel like you don't really see a lot of drops out of Idaho State. What stood out for you about the Idaho State pass catchers?
Yeah, like you said, Tracy wouldn't have the success that he has without these guys. And Fredrickson had a nice game against us. They do have a lot of strong hands. They do run a lot of this kind of out. They're going to stretch you out and make you try and cover space. And because our team lacked the linebackers to really do a lot of that, they were able to find just little spots where our guys weren't covering. And so it's a little bit difficult to cover sometimes, but like I said, seeing your guys' secondary last week against us, it was like they're probably up to the task, because if you're able to slow them down and get putouts against them, then they're a team that is going to slow down a bit, and then you have the opportunity to kind of get out in front of them. And if you get in front of them early, they're going to panic, and then Tracy's going to feel pressure to keep up, and that's when he's going to make mistakes. Like you said, 7 interceptions this season. Maybe a couple more, depending on how things go.
Yeah. Before we talk about a little bit more about, we do need to talk about the run game for ISU a little bit. Look, Idaho State does not run the ball that much, but last year it was, Hunter Hayes, quarterback, was their leading rusher. This time they're rushing about 33-ish% of the time. So I don't know if that's Dan Hawkins' influence on the team. We'll see. But Hunter Hayes, this is kind of a change-up that Idaho State has. They have 2 quarterbacks, but they don't do it the Montana way, where it's a catastrophe for all involved for the most part. The starting quarterback is Kobe Tracy. Hunter Hayes comes in as a change-up. He does 2 things. One, Hunter Hayes he's a solid passer, not spectacular, but on the season, Hunter Hayes is completing 68% of his passes. He's thrown 6 touchdowns and 2 picks. Only 48 attempts on the season, but hey, that 48 didn't come as a starter when like Tracy went out. Like Hunter Hayes is going to be used pretty much every game as a passer, but also on the ground. This season, Hunter Hayes is the number 2 rusher for Idaho State. He's kind of their red zone. They use him a lot in the red zone as a gadget's the wrong term, but it just creates some unpredictability on the offense. He's got 6 rushing touchdowns, and he's a solid thrower. So he's a weird rusher to me, Colby, because he isn't actually like that shifty. He's mostly a straight line rusher, but he's just a tough guy. He's been around the Big Sky for a long time, and he doesn't make mistakes.
He has a lot of experience throwing the ball, like you said, but the trouble is that he can throw, right? And so if they're going to primarily use him as this sort of running quarterback, but he can also throw, you can see why they would use him in those short yardage situations, right? Because everybody is not quite sure what they're going to do. We try to do the same thing with Creighton Cooper, but it doesn't work because Creighton Cooper doesn't actually throw. He just runs. So everybody just, sells out and they'll stop him at the line. But Hayes is a little bit different.
Yeah, well, what you described at Weber is the dynamic almost every Big Sky team who plays 2 quarterbacks, again, who's not Montana, has, which is the second quarterback is more of the running quarterback. That is the case with Hayes, but different from Jared Taylor at Eastern, or like the example you just gave. Hunter Hayes is a solid passer. There are absolutely some schools in the Big Sky that I think he could be a starting quarterback at. Not a ton, but if I'm Northern Colorado, I'd take Hunter Hayes in a heartbeat over whatever is going on in Greeley. So hey, that's mostly where we're talking about offense, but just be aware. The main running threats you're going to hear: Hunter Hayes for sure, a lot in the red zone, but also Deson Brooks He's the leading rusher, 450 yards on the season. Then Kiowa Kawi, I guarantee I butchered that name, just over 300 yards rushing on the season, 5 rushing touchdowns between those two. So you guys put that together. The running quarterback has 6 of the 11 rushing touchdowns for Idaho State. So, hey, a couple comments we got to get to. D Green 1562able couldn't get tickets. Yeah, it's a sellout. This game, I want to spend like 1 second talking about this, Colby, and I'm curious about your take here. Idaho State has kind of been growing as a rivalry. There are some people who are touchy about the term rivalry. I am not. My take is, if there are games you care about more than others, it's some spectrum of a rivalry. Idaho State clearly treats Idaho as a rivalry, and Idaho clearly, to me and most Idaho fans, certainly value the Idaho State game over top 5 Portland State or Cal Poly or a lot of the schedule that's not, let's say like Montana State. So I'm fine calling it a rivalry. My main take is, okay, hey, well, what's more fun, to pretend like nothing matters or to have games you care about? Well, I would rather have games I care about. I mean, I've never heard a Weber State fan bitch about a team not being their rival as a put down. So just want to throw it to you for a second. Idaho State, is it a rivalry? A person who does not go to either school.
I think that there's value in saying that it is, right? Obviously, same state, so you guys have this new trophy, which is really, really cool. And part of it, too, is, right, like, hey, we have a trophy, so there has to be some kind of rivalry. I mean, it's not quite like the Eastern trophy you guys have where, what do you call it?
Chisco Cup.
Chisco Cup, yeah. It's not quite like that, but there's something there extra behind it. But for us, I felt like a lot of Weber State fans did this thing when SUU left the conference, when they try to be like, no, we own them. They're not our rival. And we've done it to the Stripes for years, too, where it's like, we own them. I think we beat the Stripes. Idaho State has only beat Weber State like 5 times in my life. So it's a pretty lopsided rivalry, but I think there's value in saying that, like, no, there is something here. The geography thing obviously is a thing. The 2 domes, right? So you might not feel like it's a rivalry, but there's sometimes value. And like you said, this game is sold out, man. So somebody thinks it's a rivalry.
Yeah. You got to yank the topic for 1 second. Jason Mayer in the comments section. When are we getting Hoarder Corner walk-on shirts?
Oh, man, the Hoarder Corners are legendary, aren't they? Holt Arena. Legend.
Yeah. 3 of the 4 corners are still active. One was converted into like a meeting room, but let's just say I have some connections in Idaho State who gladly send me pictures of those corners pretty regularly. And yeah, it's everything that you want. I know you just said Weber is where that Bell Trophy was. Yeah. You could have told me that Idaho State lost 2 different trophies in their 3 corners, and I would say, like, of course they did.
They don't know where it went.
Yeah,
maybe that's where King Spud is. It's in one of those corners.
Okay, so we still have a little bit of defense to talk for Idaho State. I don't think we need to talk about it that much. I mean, like, they just fired their TC with 1 game left in the season. They run a 3-3-5. That's what Montana runs, but it's what Northern Colorado runs. But I mean, lots of teams run different formations. If you suck at defense, you suck at defense. Idaho State, the jury is in. They are the number 12 scoring defense in the conference, giving up 40.9 points a game in conference play. If you want to ignore that last game, sure, it's still like 37. And as far as total yardage, Idaho State is number 11, giving up 504 yards per game. So not a ton of defense being played by Idaho State. They're a little bit tougher than last season in terms of physicality, but look, they just got their asses kicked, but they gave up 77 points. In the win over Weber, Idaho State wasn't exactly shutting down Weber by any means. That was 42-35 is the final score of that game.
Yeah.
So I guess you've most recently seen Idaho State where they gave up less than 40. What stood out about the defense?
So the thing that they did a pretty good job against Weber in that first half, because for a while, we've had problems with our offense, right, throughout the season, but there have been these bright spots where they've been able to put up numbers, Montana, Sac, and a lot of that.
Weber on the season, you guys are scoring, 33 games, so it's not a catastrophe, but you're also saying it's up and down.
Yeah, the problem is that, we let the other team score so many points. Because like you said, I mean, sure, Weber put up 35 points in that game, but they gave up 43. And so that's the difference. As the secret to them is that their run defense is awful, man. It is so, so bad. And so for us, we had a stable of running backs in Damon Bankston, Davion Godley. Like, they just ate, right? Because you had these opportunities to just run all over them. So we hoped that would be the thing that kind of keep them up. But the pass game also wasn't bad, too. So it's like you can score against them, obviously. 77 points last weekend in Cheney. You can score. And if you can get enough stops, there's just not enough time for them to catch up.
Yeah, so what Patty Frakes, friend of the show, would say is, especially against Eastern, like ISU is just stubborn, and they kept running 5 and 6 man boxes that were getting abused, and Eastern was happy to continue to abuse ISU on the ground. Not that they're great in their pass defense either, but to contextualize like how bad ISU has been against the ground game. So Montana State, Colby, they are one of the best. If they're not the best rushing offense in the nation, they're one of them. Yeah. Montana State has rushed for 24 touchdowns in Big Sky play. How many touchdowns do you think Idaho State has given up on the ground? Just Big Sky play. Just Big Sky play.
All right, yeah, I got to look. Rushing touchdowns?
The number is 24 for Montana State, a noted national powerhouse on the ground.
I'm going to say it's probably around there. It's probably something crazy and dumb, like they've given up 28 or something like that.
You are so close.
Oh.
The number is 26.
Oh, just a little over.
In 7 games. So in 7 games, they're giving up just under 4 rushing touchdowns per game, surrendering 6.4 yards per rush. Yeah, safe to say ISU, like firing their coach, not shocking. The stats for ISU through the air, I think they look deceptively better than they are, but that because of how ISU can't stop anyone on the ground. Relative strength is a secondary, but that's not because the ISU secondary is strong. It's because up front, ISU is as bad as it gets. So we have to talk to Idaho end. Before we talk to Idaho end, we can talk about show sponsor Snake River Stampede Canadian Whiskey. Look, there's 2 options here, and you can't go wrong either way. You can get the entry-level Snake River Stampede, 3-grain whiskey with a double barrel finish, first fill bourbon, then finished in Oloroso sherry casks, $25.95 at Idaho State liquor stores, one of the best buys in the entire state of Idaho. If you want to celebrate a big win, or maybe celebrate getting a first-round bye in the playoffs after beating Idaho State again, you can buy their 1915 small batch. It's aged an additional 2 years. Your Stampede is aged 8 years, so your 1915s are aged 10. Its double barrel finish is first fill bourbon, then finished in ex-Canadian rye whiskey casks. Either way, you cannot go wrong. Grab yourself a Snake River today. So, hey, Colby, same question in a different angle. You also just got to see Weber State play Idaho, and Jack Lane is going to be starting this game, and you got to see Jack Lane in action. When you see what Idaho was able to do against Weber, what's your take on what you think Idaho is going to be leaning on against Idaho State? Maybe I should tell you, just in case you're not clear on it. Idaho's running room is getting a little thin. All of their top 4 running backs have injuries of one sort. The only one it appears Nate Thomas may play. We haven't seen Elisha Cummings, the number 1, for more than a month. He did not dress against Weber State. Dave Buchanan looked like he's gone against Weber State. He left on crutches.
Not ideal, right?
That is a way to put that, yeah.
The thing is with Idaho State, I mean, with what you guys did against us last week, like I already talked about, the weakness in our defense was the linebackers, and so there was there were these little gaps, there were these spots that you could get to, and I'm going to say that you're going to probably have similar opportunities against Idaho State, right? That they are a defense that's not great. The rush defense gives you an indicator of how good their backers can be, right? That's been our problem all season, is that our backers are garbage, so teams have been able to run on us in situations that I don't love. So it's a similar thing for Idaho State, where it's like they haven't had that linebacking core that is so prolific that they're stopping the run, that they're kind of rangy and locking down the middle of the field. And so I think that if Idaho does kind of a similar thing to what they did against Weber State. They're probably going to have success. Our secondary is maybe worse than theirs, but I think there's still going to be a lot of the same kinds of opportunities against the Bengals.
Yeah, the thing that I'm looking at first is so one of the few things that's constant in Idaho from 23 to 2024 is, and hey, this was in 2022. Heading into this year, Jack Lane has had 5 total starts, 3 this season. Colby, 2 one as a redshirt, and then one as his true freshman year, both against Idaho State. Last season, Lane threw 6 touchdown passes against Idaho State, barely even played in the second half. I mean, we jokingly refer to Jack Lane as the Bengal killer because he sits at 2-0. Went last year 20 of 26 for 275 yards and 6 touchdowns. Now that was in Moscow, and ISU was absolutely not. They weren't ready for that. So what I think is, I mean, look, Idaho's going to try to run the ball, but like the health of the running backs is going to dictate a little bit of that. But what Jack Lane can do that will more than make up for that is, one, he has historically had absolutely no problem with Idaho State. Again, like 6 touchdowns, 5 in the first half last season. But what Lane can do well is he can pick teams apart. So I think if Idaho feels like they can't run the ball as well just due to health, they are more than confident letting Jack Lane pick apart his zone. So like that to me is part of how Idaho could they can still have some of those long drives that can put the other team on the shelf, is just let Lane go to work. Which look, against Weber State, Idaho did rush. They rushed more than they passed against Weber State, but Jack Lane against Weber, Weber was, other than Oregon, the last 2 games against Weber and Eastern were the 2 best teams Lane started against. Against Weber, set 18 to 27 for 3 touchdowns. 1 really bad pick, we'll give that. But that's what I think honestly, that's where I kind of think Idaho has a pretty big edge. Is yes, they're going to be able to run the ball against Idaho State because everyone else can. But the way Lane can cycle through reads, just one of the things that's different with Lane is there's not just one guy he's targeting. He's getting it to the tight ends. He's getting it to multiple receivers. Mark Hamper was the big target last week against Weber. But, in other games, it's been Jordan Dwyer. And also just whenever Lane started, like the tight ends are going to get more catches than they typically do. So I guess that's where I look at what Idaho can do offensively, and where I just don't think Idaho's going to struggle to put up some points on the Bengals at all, even with, some injury issues in the running back room. Defensively, though, Colby, I think this is a different question because we've seen this pattern in a lot of Idaho games, which is the first half, Idaho tends to be a little bit more base, a little more zone, a little more conservative, given a little bit more cushion. That essentially is telling teams like, hey, if you can complete a ton of short to intermediate passes to string together drives, enjoy. Like that's the way you're going to do it. And then the second half, where Idaho gets more creative and gets more aggressive. That template is, I think that's one that is theoretically favorable to Idaho State. From what you saw of Tracy and from what you saw of Idaho in first half defensively, I guess, what do you think of the Idaho State defensive matchup?
So I was thinking about, when you were talking there, about how exactly what you were talking about, how sort of the first half for Idaho has been kind of this way, and then they kind of loosen up in the second half. Like the Cal Poly game to me is kind of that way, right? Where Absolutely. It was like kind of a slog, like what's going on here? Idaho should be blowing this team out. And then,
Portland
second half,
State went the same way.
Yeah, and then they kind of figure things out, and they're like, okay, we're going to put this away. And so you're right. If that is kind of the way that they go, because I would say that Cal Poly is maybe fairly similar to Idaho State as well. They want to throw the ball as well. We'll see them in Ogden on Saturday. So if that is the case, then yeah, it is going to favor Idaho State, because Tracy is good enough at getting the ball out of his own hands and into somebody else's that just a little bit of space can be all he needs. And so it can be maybe a little bit difficult to cover guys, but if the Vandals are able to play tight coverage without penalties and just kind of keep their hands in there, it's going to disrupt them. And I think that we've talked a lot about this on our show, about how giving teams confidence, right? If you give a team confidence early in the game that they maybe can beat you, they will beat you. That's what happened in Northern Colorado. That's what happened to McNeese. That's what happened to Idaho State, right? We never led in that Idaho State game because they started out confident and then it just grew. And so I think that for Idaho, it's got to be sort of like what some of the folks in the comments have said, like put them away early. They're not a great team. And so if you're able to go out there and put them away
not great,
early,
but not terrible.
Sure, right? Not great, but not terrible. But if you're able to affect them in a way, like send a statement, like go up 14-0, like really quick early in the game, that's going to have an effect on the game. I think it changes the complexion of the kinds of plays, and it puts a little bit of pressure on them to say, okay, because it's a big game, right? It's sold out, so they're going to feel pressure to perform. And if you guys are able to do sort of like what you said, Jack Lane, 6 touchdowns last year. My goodness, if he's able to carve them up like that again, they're going to feel pressure. They're going to play tight. It's not going to work for them.
See, that the start of this game to me is going to be so interesting because last season, Idaho just demoralized Idaho State right out the gate, 28-0 at the end of the first quarter. And in addition to just raining touchdowns on ISU, which this will be an advantage for ISU because, like, hey, look, no one had tape on what Jack Lane offense looked like when Lane started against Idaho State last season. And what he did was different than what Idaho typically did week in, week out. But having Lane back has really solved Idaho's offensive woes. They scored over 30 points the last 3 games. Idaho's going to put points on the board against Idaho State because, again, everyone does, but Idaho's been doing that the last 3 weeks. That's more than a trend. But I think this game is going to mean a lot to the Bengals. They got a sold-out crowd. Yes, there's going to be some Vandals in Pocatello, but there's going to be a lot of Idaho State fans in Pocatello as well. And I think this game is going to be important for Idaho State to try to, I don't know, prove they're closer to that 500 record than maybe they feel. Look, they're going to finish 5-7. So I'm going to pick them to lose. So there's no way I'd pick Idaho State to win this. But I would in no way be shocked if this game is a little tighter in the first half than last year because it's not possible to be worse than 56-0 at halftime. Like, it just doesn't. Idaho could have scored 100 points if they had not gone to backups early in the second half. But I think this Idaho State team has a little more of a chip on their shoulder this season. Like, I feel like last season, Idaho State kind of face planted into a couple of those wins. I mean, like, hey, look, realistically,
like the Eastern win, yeah.
Yeah, and they got Portland State with multiple injuries. So, like, that was pretty advantageous for both those. And I think you're looking at Idaho State at the start of this year. If they only pick up one out of those 2 wins, then it's a 2-win team. I don't think there's that much energy. But, hey, the Bengals have 5 wins this year. Yes, one's a bullshit D2 win, but whatever. That means there's 4 non-bullshit D1 wins. And they've beaten some teams that, look, Weber's down this year. Yeah, but right. For Idaho State, that's a very good win. I mean,
their Super Bowl, man. Like, that is their Super Bowl.
Yeah. So I think the energy of this game is going to just be – it's going to be interesting to me to see how that shakes out. I mean, Idaho's got the most to play for because Idaho at this point we can – Dom Kendall, Bryan, remind me what you did. What did you pick ISU at the preseason? I picked them 10 because I just told you, like, hey, they got 3 wins. 2 of them were kind of bullshit wins. So I thought, hey, I'm not going to round them up until I see that they're deserving of rounding up. We do get to take context into the equation. But Idaho State answered the bell. They're different this season. They run the ball a little bit more. They suck. They can't stop anyone, but they at least try to be physical. So they're doing some of the things that are right. I mean, they're just clearly – I feel like they're kind of in the bottom of the middle tier of the conference. Yeah. But you can lose to a team at the bottom of the middle tier of the conference as a good team if you don't.
I know
exactly.
If you don't my gosh, do I know?
So, look, we get to the Idaho score prediction late, but hey, Colby, before we shift away, start talking about the conference. Any other takeaways? Any other things about Idaho State that because you've seen both teams in the last 2 weeks, that stands out to you about this game as a whole?
2 words, Jason Eck. Eck proved last season that he knew how to push the right buttons to just absolutely, like you said, demoralize Idaho State early in that game. And I got to believe that he's got a similar recipe. Injuries have been a factor for you guys, but I think that you guys are finding your way through that. You did talk about the running back room being a little thin, but the quarterback position especially, having Lane back, I think matters a lot, an awful lot. And so that plus Jason Eck calling the shots, man. Like, I gotta think that we may not necessarily see a repeat of last year, but I gotta think that Eck knows which buttons to push Cody Hawkins, even though his Daddy Dan is on staff this year. I got to think that Jason Eck knows what he needs to do. It's sort of like we used to talk about Jay Hill just had certain people's numbers, right? Like Jay Hill just always seemed to get the best of Aaron Best. I don't know what it was, but he just did. And I got to think that Jason Eck maybe is kind of the same thing with Idaho State and Cody Hawkins right now.
Jason Mayer in the comment section, how is ISU's time of possession? Just under 28 minutes per game. So, hey, slightly underwater, but ISU is also game to go tempo, which the teams that have given Idaho the most trouble offensively are teams that can pass the ball and teams that'll speed up play. So I have to expect you're going to see a bit of that out of Idaho State. The other side being now this is where Idaho State can run into trouble. Like when you play up tempo and you pass the ball a ton, you can sprint to 3 and out pretty fast when things aren't clicking. I don't know. I don't want to say that I think Idaho's going to change up what they do in the first half defensively, but I don't know. I wouldn't mind if that was something Idaho did this week. With the caveat being, like you just said, Idaho's been pretty good at getting to the quarterback defensively on the season. Especially last week against Weber, Idaho was pretty effective. Richie Munoz always, because he's 5'2", 7,000 pounds, he always makes someone miss with his weird. He has the short, fat person athleticism where he can duck, and it always seems like there's going to be at least one of those a game. Yeah, that's not Kobe Tracy, but Kobe Tracy just gets rid of the ball pretty fast. Yeah. So that's partially going to be what can help, what might be what would neutralize the pass rush. But I don't know. Idaho State to me feels like a matchup that the Vandals like. As far as stylistically, defensively, they are fine with a team that is not that much of a threat to run the ball. And hey, different than, let's say, what we just talked about, ISU did. ISU is stubborn in the dumbest way possible against Eastern. Idaho is typically not stubborn in that way as far as coaching is concerned. Idaho doesn't really care about the aesthetics of a win. The Vandal coaches in all 3 years have largely cared about the win. So wouldn't be shocked if maybe there's a little change defensively in the first half. Because, look, there's a lot of tape on teams, too. So it's
this is the last week, right? All the tape you want is out there.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I guess my last piece is there's reasons. You can understand, hey, if this game is played 100 times, ways that Idaho State keeps it close.
Yeah.
There are many ways where just because of matchups, there's just no way for me to not like Idaho here significantly more. And I don't know, I think that Idaho's playing their best football to me of the season as far as a complete team, because early in the season they're playing great defensively, weren't putting points up on the board. Idaho's putting points up on the board, the defense is rounding right back into shape. So plus I talk about ISU, they're going to have a high energy crowd. This game means a ton to ISU. That kind of weights in the marginally in their favor. To me, it weighs in Idaho's favor is they're playing better these last few weeks than I feel like they've played much of the season. And honestly, this is one of the worst defenses Idaho's played the entire season. So we're going to get to picking the Big Sky, and we'll hit the Idaho game last after we talk about Hughes River Expedition. Look, Hughes River Expedition they've been Vandal owned since 1976 and are ready to take you on the vacation of a lifetime. Enjoy a multi-day trip down the Middle Fork of the Salmon, the main Salmon River of no return, the Salmon River Canyons, or the Selway, and check out special trips like the one to see the Perseid Meteor Shower. Camp on pristine beaches, run amazing whitewater, hike scenic trails, spot wildlife, soak in beautiful natural hot springs, and fish some of the most remote stretches of river in the country. You just bring your clothes, let HRE handle the rest. Grab a paddle, catch dinner, and ride the bull all throughout the Gem State. Call them now, 406-540-4450, or check them out at hughesriver.com. All right, Martin, you going to jump in for the pick'em?
Do it.
Yep.
So if you are a listener, that means yes. Okay, Martin, and hey, Colby, we give yourself permission to talk about whatever stands out to you about these games. So we're going to hit one that might be closer to home for you first. Cal Poly at Weber State.
Yeah. So
Well, for the pick'em rotation, look, we're gonna go. Colby. I'm gonna throw to Colby, then Marten, and then I'll close out.
So to pick this game first, I fully believe that Cal Poly is going to win on Saturday. They're coming off of a win against Sac State last week. Weber has shown that they, for some reason, can't seem to put it together, and even teams like Northern Colorado have come to Ogden and won this year. The only team that Weber State has beaten Ogden this year is top 5 Portland State. That's it. And
Seriously?
we faced
one home win.
Yeah, one. We lost to McNeese.
I mean, there's only 3 wins on the season, so there can't be that many, but one?
Yeah. So it's been really, it's like the opposite of the Jay Hill years where, the Lizzie was a fortress. No, the Lizzie is like everybody else's home field now. And so I fully believe that Cal Poly can come into this and win. We talked about the way that they like to play. They like to throw the ball. We've had trouble with teams like that who like to run up the score because we can't seem to stop them. So I am committed to watching my Weber State Wildcats lose one more time.
Marten?
I'm just gonna go Weber State. Yeah.
So that
A lot of people in the comments have faith. I don't know, guys. I've lost the faith. I've watched a lot of games this year. I don't have that same faith that some of you do.
here's the thing: Cal Poly is the worst passing defense in the conference. Although it kind of depends on what you care about here. Like Eastern has just given up touchdown after touchdown after touchdown through the air, but Cal Poly, as far as like yards per game, they're the worst. So, I mean, to me, this feels like the kind of game where Weber can hang. They're going to hang a good amount of points on Cal Poly, and I don't know, man. I feel like Sacramento State last week. That's more of a product of Sac State just completely imploding this year, which is a separate thing we can talk about later.
I don't hate that.
Well, here's the thing that I don't want there to be bad teams in the Big Sky, and no, I want there to be bad teams to play Idaho. But like, as far as like the Big Sky itself to be interesting, I just want more teams that are better. Sacramento State was bad forever. Then we all know the Troy Taylor story, but this is Andy Thompson's been there for 2 years. It's incredible how quickly that went downhill. Transfer portal era changes things, of course, on how quickly you can lose talent, but also how quickly you can rebuild. But shifting to Weber, I just don't think Cal Poly's. I think Cal Poly Super Bowl is winning 2 games, so I'm picking Weber this game. You make me anxious about this pick, Colby, because of how effortlessly you jumped to you're picking Cal Poly. I'm sure that even Cal Poly homers don't jump that quickly to Cal Poly, but I guess. Well, hey, Weber State question, then we'll go to the next game. I have described Weber and Sac State as being like the exact same team in different ways this year. They're not talent free, but things just never came together in a way that matched what the talent actually is. Agree or disagree?
No, I think you're right. It's not a team that is talent free. There is a lot of talent. Like Kamar Munyar-Bailey is probably going to be first team all conference.
Vandals are aware of that guy.
Yeah, I'm sure you are. But I just like a lot. If you look at the early season, a lot of these wins or these losses were like losing to Lamar by 1, losing to McNeese by like 3 or whatever we lost by. It was just like a lot of small little wins that I think added up. And we talked about confidence, right? And I think that over time, Weber State just kind of lost that confidence. There was the high of the Montana win, right? And then everything just fell apart. We haven't won a game since then. And that's a game that I told the guys, is like, if I have to trade a Montana win for a garbage season, I don't want that win. as great as it is to win in Missoula, guys, which you guys know, what that's like in recent memory. Like, I don't want it if it means losing to Northern Colorado at home. I don't want it.
Okay. All right. Well. All right. I'm picking Weber.
All right.
But I see. I'm going to take your confidence in what's going on. It's Mickey Mental's second year, right?
It's his 3rd as offensive coordinator, 2nd as head coach.
Yeah. His 3rd year with Weber State, 2nd as head coach.
Yep.
Sorry, we'll move on from Weber. I really thought at the end of 2023 they had things figured out.
Yeah, because there was momentum going into those last 2 or 3 games.
You guys also lost just a shit ton of defensive talent.
Yeah, and like I said, backers have been the problem, right? But I feel like the D-line this year was good. Thanks for Kamari Munya-Bailey. But, like,
Yeah.
it just hasn't been able to put it together, like you said. So it is what it is.
Okay, next game. Now, this game matters for playoff implications. Eastern Washington at Northern Arizona. Look, if Northern Arizona wins, they got some help with some of the last, like the two of the four teams that Sam Herder labeled as last four into the playoff bracket. Not that Sam Herder is infallible here, but the East Tennessee State and Chattanooga losses last week were an example of help that NAU needed to get to be able to potentially sneak into the playoffs by winning out. Because NAU is going to have a strong strength schedule compared to, well, I mean, if you're a Big Sky team or a Missouri Valley team, your strength schedule is always strong relative to all the Eastern and Southern conferences. But before we get to that point, NAU's got to get through Eastern in Flagstaff, Colby.
Which, I mean, it's weird up there, right? I mean, you guys know, like, it's weird up in Flagstaff. It's 7,200 feet up there. The ball flies kind of different. We've always just had problems up there. And the Jacks have kind of a good secondary this year. That was one of the things that stood out to us going into this game, was that they are a team that defends the pass fairly well, and that's what Eastern likes to do. But it's not the only thing that Eastern does, right? It's not like Eastern teams of old where all they're going to do is throw the ball, and if that doesn't work well, then they lose. They've got tricks, and so I don't know. I feel like this is a trap game for the Jacks. They have these expectations now. They're ranked 21 this week or something like that. They certainly have the advantage of being at home, but I don't know, man. I feel like they easily could potentially lose this game because Eastern maybe is feeling themselves after putting up 77 last week.
Yeah, hey, comment section, most people went with Weber in the first game. This game, it's a little split. We got Tom Kendall and James Jacobs are going Ewu. Skylar Rash says, I could drive to Pocatello, but lookout pass looks ass right now. Okay. Nice. By the way, Skylar, very kind of you to go with Pocatello. We tend to go with Pocadildo on the show, so very kind of you there. Jason Mayer,
they would be mad if they could hear that, because you guys know there's no internet in Pocatello, right?
What? Yeah, I remember you referencing that on
there's no internet
on the show.
There's no internet.
Yeah, they didn't invest the infrastructure, right?
They would be mad if they could read that.
But thank you, Colby. So Jason Mayer saying NAU defense does enough. Eastern is inconsistent again. Taylor Cash says Jacks. Tom Kendall saying NAU will coog it, which is to say faceplant. Like, can you believe Washington State lost to New Mexico, who Montana State beat? I mean,
yeah.
Speaking of cooging it. Okay. James Jacobs. Eastern has a very potent rushing attack, especially with Taylor in. Marten. Who's going to win? Eastern or NAU?
NAU.
Okay. Now, Colby, with NAU, I always feel like you got to throw an asterisk. This is only talking conference stats.
Yeah.
You know who the best passing defense statistically in the Big Sky is, right?
Yeah. It's the Jacks.
Yes, it's the same team with statistically the best rushing defense in the Big Sky. However, again, having dodged Montana State and UC Davis certainly helps out. But in Big Sky play, Eastern's given up NAU, not Eastern, Jesus. NAU has given up 12 touchdowns in Big Sky play. So, like, Brian Wright's doing something right there. Now, part of what he's doing right is face planting into a great conference schedule to help you out there. But I kind of go back and forth on this, but I am with Jason Mayer here. Is Eastern is just all over the place. Mm-hmm. I feel like this clearly looks like a letdown week for Eastern to me, because I feel like that game in Cheney was, other than the obvious ass kicking it was, I feel like that was kind of a goodbye to Aaron Best, who's been an Eastern Eagle for 28 years, and he's probably not coming back as head coach next season. Which means, hey, you have the big, huge emotional win one week. What does that normally set inconsistent groups for the next week is a letdown. And NAU has been, they've been the opposite. Now, NAU has had they have 4 consecutive Big Sky wins quite easily. Had Ty Pennington played against Montana, we'd be talking 5 consecutive Big Sky wins for NAU. So I'm going to go NAU, but I think it's going to be tight. And I guess I'm also with you on the like NAU is just a weird place to go. It's environmentally, it's like the environmental triple option. It's nothing like anywhere else you play.
Yeah.
Their environment as far as fans is very up or down. So I don't know how they're going to be to close the season finally in playoff contention. But I don't know. Lots of teams have weird weeks in Flagstaff. NAU is usually not one of those teams. So yeah, I'm gonna go with NAU.
So it wasn't clear kind of which I picked. I'm with Jason. I think that he's probably right. NAU defense does enough to get it done and beats Eastern. So I'll go with the Jacks too, but a game worth watching.
The game of the week look, if you're following Big Sky Sports, you're probably exhausted by the media coverage of this already. Top 5 Portland State hosts Northern Colorado.
Oh, man.
Colby.
Oh, man. Northern Colorado's so bad, dude. I'm picking top 5 Portland State. Sasheray is going to do stuff. I got to think that they're going to get it. Because it's in Hillsboro, right?
Yes.
I believe, yeah.
Yeah, so
top 5 facility.
Yeah, man. So I don't know. I'm gonna
softball fields.
taking the Vikes.
Camera crew.
Oh, that was a nice turn, Brian. I like that, man. I thought you were going one way and you totally went another, and I was like, oh man, that was perfect.
Okay, Marten.
Sasheray seals up Offensive Player of the Year on a really bad Portland State team.
Stop.
Vikings win.
Stop it.
Okay, I'm not actually going to talk about this game. Top 5 Portland State. Colby, you said stop it to Sasheray because your Offensive Player of the Year vote would go to.
In the conference?
Yeah.
It's
more interesting than the actual game. So come on.
It's Lan Larson, man. The guy's insane. Like his all-purpose yardage is nuts.
Yeah, I'm pretty much with you on that. I think there's probably going to be like a career achievement vote that goes to Tommy Malott, but I think Lan Larson's the guy.
Best player on the best team, right? Like we've seen that in basketball in recent days where, maybe somebody named Dylan Jones should have won MVP, but they gave it to Steele Venters because he was on the Eastern Washington Eagles, who were the best team in the conference that year. Jabril Bello, the best, on the best team, blah, blah, blah. The Big Sky tends to do that, so wouldn't be surprised if Malott got that nod.
Yeah, full disclosure, I really don't like when that's the route it goes. And not that it actually matters, but I find it annoying as hell. Okay, now we're done. We obviously moved off that. A different, not quite game of the week. A game that on paper, week 1 of conference play, everyone thought, okay, this rivalry week, one of the games we really care about. I don't think it's that way anymore. Causeway Classic, UC Davis at Sacramento State.
Yeah, Davis is going to smash, right? The game is at Sacramento, right? But
yeah,
Davis has shown, even though they lost last week, Sac is, like you said, they've been imploding, and it's not happening. You lose to Cal Poly, I have no faith in you.
Yeah, Marten, you go.
Davis.
Yeah, so Davis wins this game. I think they have to have a stranglehold on the 4 seed. And Davis they had one no-show this year. It was where they beat Portland State by roughly 0.5 inches, or depending on the camera angle, they should not have beaten Portland State. But Davis they've been steady. They're also playing some of their better football as the season comes to a close. Strong on both sides of the ball. Yeah, I'm going Davis, and I'm all for it. I think I don't know. We can hit playoff seeds in a minute, for a minute, but I think Davis is going to get the number 4 seed. I just think that's what's going to happen here, and Davis is going to finish the season with 2 losses on the year, one at Cal and Montana State. And I'd say there's 3 teams in the nation with a better resume than that. Next game, the actual game that if you follow Big Sky Media, like you're probably, if you're not a Grizz or a Cat fan, like you're probably already oversaturated. But to be fair, it is the biggest spectacle in the conference on the year. If Idaho had a rivalry that was active with that level of energy, we'd be insufferable too. It's the Brawl of the Wild, Montana at Montana State.
Yeah, it's Montana State. This game is in Bozeman. They've got all the momentum. Although they do have, we talked about this on Monday night, they've got a lot of pressure on them. Brent Wahlberg from the Grizz Pan Pod talked about this, about how the Grizz have no pressure. They're expected to lose. They're going into this, and so Montana State might play tight. I think they're still going to win, but they might play a little tight, and that might play a factor as the playoffs go on, because Montana State working very hard to get that 2 seed.
Brian, you want me to go now, Brian?
Yeah, I'm ready for you.
Montana State.
Yeah, I think the matchup for Montana is terrible. I do think that weirdly the drama at quarterback actually might resolve quarterback, which is hysterical. Logan Fife was easily the better quarterback for most of the season. What did he have to do to get the starting job? Yell fuck you or whatever it is so many times at Bobby Houck on the sideline in front of cameras. That's what got – I love that that's what will get him the starting job. But anyway, it's hysterical. No, it's a terrible matchup though. Montana State's going to – yeah, I think Montana State's going to win by at least 2 or 3 scores. I don't think the Grizz have the defense at all to slow Montana State down, and I think Montana State, I mean, they're a very good defensive team too. They're sound on both sides of the ball. They're in contention for a national championship for a reason. Now the game we care about here, Idaho State, Idaho. Colby, who's your pick? What's the score?
Yeah, so I like Idaho, I think, in this one, because I think that Jason Eck and I think that the Vandals offense is going to have they're going to pull some levers that are going to work, and they understand how to do it already. Final score, it's probably going to be a shootout, so I'm going to guess something really high, like 56-48 or something dumb like that, right?
You think Idaho's going to give up 48? That's okay.
That's just the way that Idaho State has been this season, man. Like, they've been putting up points. It's just they are.
They have been putting up points. Anyway, I think Idaho State's an interesting team. They're at least an interesting story, and I'm happy to have another interesting story in the Big Sky Conference. Martin, your pick.
Idaho 41, ISU 24.
Okay. In the comment section, which I need to get to, we have Tom Kendall says Idaho 34, ISU 24. I don't know how to read that. Fats to Mac. I'm done trying. You guys know who I'm talking about. Idaho 56, Idaho State 21. Captain 58, talking about last game, Cats by 20 plus. Jason Mayer, Idaho 38, Idaho State 17. Taylor Cash, Idaho 42, ISU 24. James Jacobs, Idaho 35, Idaho State 24. Ron saying Bryan has a secret crush on ISU. I have a secret crush on on there being less shitty teams in the Big Sky, Ron. But I do think Idaho State's fun. But fun and good are not necessarily the same thing. So, look, I'm going to pick Idaho.
I don't think they're fun.
Careful, Brian. That sounds like a certain account we can't talk about.
Jesus Christ. Anyway, I'm going to go with – look, obviously picking Idaho. I think Idaho has the Bengals number for sure. I wouldn't be shocked. Look, I'm going to go 45-24. I think it's tight for a half, and Idaho just takes over in the second half. I think Idaho State looks real good, especially based off emotion from the crowd and from trying to avenge last year. But it's a long game to have something extra like that sustain you. So, yeah, going Idaho there. And then, hey, just for playoff stuff, if Idaho wins this game, Colby, my take is we already covered Davis should be 4 if Davis wins.
Yeah, because South Dakota is going to lose probably to North Dakota State, so they can't be the 4 with that loss. And
South Dakota has a preposterously thin resume compared to the other top 5 or 6 teams. What they have is they passed the eye test. That should matter, right?
They're in the Valley, sure.
But both things should matter. You should look good, but you should also have a body of evidence of looking good against good teams. So Montana State, they're in line. They're going to be 1 or 2. I don't care what you get out of 1 or 2 because you still get to host through the semifinals, and whether you'd rather be 1 or 2 will actually be dictated on your matchups in the bracket. Yeah. So I don't care who 1 or 2 is, but I think Montana State's going to probably be 2.
Yeah, me too.
Idaho's an interesting spot because on October 30th, initial rankings, Idaho is number 7 behind SEMO. SEMO at 6, Davis at 5, and South Dakota at 4. Since October 30th, SEMO is no longer in the picture because they lost. They lost to Lindenwood. South Dakota will have picked up two losses since October 30th. Good losses, like South Dakota State, and then they're going to lose to North Dakota State close season. So not bad losses. And they look good against South Dakota State. Still, 2 losses are 2 losses. Idaho picked up their 2 losses before the rankings. Idaho's done nothing to fall back. So to me, hey, if Davis
and they have an FBS win, right? I think
the FBS
value
win,
in that.
NAU winning games keeps that NAU win looking good, and Abilene Christian winning games keeps that win looking good as well. Yeah. So I think Idaho has a very strong case to be number 5 if Idaho wins this game and South Dakota loses to North Dakota State, like we largely anticipate. I know, Mercer is a team who's ranked above Idaho, but your ranking versus your seed, it's not a 1-to-1 correspondence because rankings always have some version of, whether it's stated or not, some implied recency to why a team is where they are, whereas your seeding is supposed to be your entire resume. So I guess, hey, Colby, your thoughts on Idaho as if Idaho wins and basically chalk holds for this week nationwide. Your take on Idaho. Should they be the 5 or not?
Yeah, I think there is a case because, like you said, Davis would come in at 4. Idaho would have better wins, and like I said, I think the FBS win is going to matter a lot this year. And so, yeah, it's like, well, who's better than them? Who should be ahead of them? I don't know. As they beat Abilene Christian, who put it to Tarleton State last weekend, right, and sort of locked that up for themselves. The SoCon has been SoConing this year, so ETSU and Chat have kind of blown their opportunities. Same with Western Carolina. So I look across the things, and the CAA, man, I don't know what to think of the CAA. Nobody watches CAA. SEMO ain't it. Losing to Lindenwood is like an eyebrow raise, right? 2-score loss to Lindenwood is like, what? So yeah, who else should have the 5 ahead of them? I don't know who that team is. So yeah, I like the chances. Got to win though on Saturday.
And some other teams to pay attention to, Incarnate Word, they're a team. They're going to get a seed provided they win. But their strength of schedule is just nothing compared to Idaho. Idaho's strength of schedule, Massey's strength of schedule is number 4 in the nation. The record Idaho's opponents have on the year heading into this week is 60-47. It's a team like Incarnate Word on a far weaker schedule, their opponent's record's 55-55 on the season. Talking about Mercer, their strength of schedule 58. The teams they've played have a combined record of 48-58. Those are kind of the 2 teams you're looking at as maybe they could take that 5 spot. Then you talk about South Dakota. Their issue is they have they're going to finish with 8 wins, meaning 7 D1 wins, so that they have that D2 win in week 1. They also lost the week by not being able to play Portland State, but hey, they didn't get to play the game. So I wouldn't be shocked if missing that game plus the D2 win effectively combines to be interpreted as just a full D1 win. But still, I don't know. I think Idaho's resume and overall is just pretty damn strong, and I think the fact that Idaho's starting to get a little more healthy, minus the running back room, to close the year, I feel like that has to matter. And if it doesn't, I don't know what they're doing ranking wise. Support the show, patreon.com/Tubs at the Club. Join the #OnlyTubs Discord. The best place to talk Vandal football in anywhere on the internet. So in Pocatello, you're just screwed. But if you don't live in Pocatello, best place to talk Vandal sports, especially game day. Our game day threads are pretty damn packed from wire to wire. Cost less than a cup of coffee a month to support the show. Of course, you want to give us more money. My whiskey cabinet, the operating expenses, never say no to a few extra bucks. So patreon.com/Tubs at the Club. Colby, is this your first time on Tubs the Club?
I think I've been on one other time. Maybe.
Okay, good. Then I didn't neglect to do reversal. So hey, before we call tonight, anything else you want to hit on? Anything you want to see to your loyal supporters, guys who've I don't know a single Tubs listener who goes to games who doesn't have at least one of these walk-on shirts.
Yeah, man. I like I said, I want to really just give the Idaho fans a thanks. I mean, we had an order come through here, so Vandals, Tubbs fans coming through. We just dropped those 2 hoodies. I worked extra hard to get the hoodies up for this show, just so that we could talk about it. So you guys are the first to hear that we're having hoodies. I don't know. We'll maybe drop the rest of them tomorrow, but I did the Idaho stuff first because you guys have been the best, and I picked the 2 best-selling designs that we have. People have loved the Dome shirt. They've loved the Tribe shirt, and so it's like they got to be on hoodies. So we're doing it. And like I said, we just really appreciate Vandals fans, Tubbs fans especially. You guys have been great. We've been donating. We donate 10% of the profits from each sale back to Idaho. And we've had a really good relationship. We just got approved for the vintage marks, so expect to see some Grumpy Joe soon.
Yeah. Oh my God, Grumpy Joe, Flamin' Heads. Okay.
Yep.
So it just got to hit us in the comment section. Patty Frakes saying he has at least 3 walk-on shirts. Tom Kendall says he has 4. I actually count because I might have 5.
You got a bunch for Christmas last year, yeah.
Yeah, I got a shit ton for Christmas, which I was absolutely okay with. But I think I have 5 walk-ons. So yeah. Anyway, guys, support Walk On Apparel. All of you guys already do it, but hey, keep doing it. How do we get more Idaho? How do we get more designs for Idaho from a place like Walk On? Keep buying their stuff.
Just buy them, yeah. Because like I said, I'll be honest, certain other schools don't sell, and so I haven't put new designs out. But we've put out some. We've had conversation with Coach X agent to maybe do something with him. We've had just combos with other people to just kind of keep feeding Idaho because you guys buy the stuff and we have a good time. The vintage stuff is going to be different for us because we do focus on the FCS, but I don't always do vintage because there are obviously other folks in that space that do also a decent job. But had to get that Grumpy Joe mark, man. Like it was just so, and I like the Joe and Jane. I don't know how you guys feel about the Joe and Jane profile.
I love it. Absolutely love it.
I love that one too. So we're probably going to do something with that. And next year's a big anniversary, so we've been working on something for that too.
Hell yeah. All right, guys. Well, hey, that's the show. Thanks for coming in. It's flooring to me. Like, hey, it's different doing the show. We record 3 a week during football season, so like our schedule's pretty packed. But like, it's astonishing to me. Like, we look forward to football season all year,
and then it's gone in a flash.
It just goes so goddamn fast. But Idaho picks up a win in Pocadillo, then we're looking at least one more home game for sure, and a week off on Thanksgiving. That to me is, I'm going to call that at least good enough. I don't know what we're going to do as far as reaction show, guys. If Idaho beats the shit out of Idaho State, we're probably going to go Sunday for response to Idaho seed, wherever that winds up. So we'll keep you posted on after the game, but the plan so far is to go on Sunday in the morning like we did last year after Idaho got its spot. We're going to call that a day. As always, go Vandals.
Go Vandals.
Go Vandals. V's up, guys.
I got a lot of great friends in Pocatello, but there were just some ignorant people that were sitting behind our bench abusing kids and me. All I did was win there and leave there. And they're still bitter apparently 8 years later, which is their problem, certainly not mine. I've moved on, man. Like I said, I'm a Vandal, man. I'm a Vandal. And 3 out of 4 years, that's pretty good. And they always said, is the grass greener? Hey, grass is greener in Moscow. 3.